The football team notable newsworthy information came bright and early on Tuesday morning when we learned about Smael Mondon and Branson Robinson, I think. Palmer, what'd you take away from that little update from Coach Smart?
Yeah, Kirby told us that those two guys, two players that are pretty important, your leading tackler from last year and a player at a position where there's not a ton of depth in Branson Robinson there, probably could miss some time. Both will miss the start of fall camp, at least won't be cleared for the start of fall camp. They should be running by then, and their status for early in the season is still up in the air. So, it's not great news. I do think he did say that he feels like that they've progressed a little bit and that they are making strides in the right direction. Said that he wasn't certain at one point whether they would miss time. Now he's, the expectation was that they would miss time. Now he's not sure whether they will or won't. So that feels like a good update. And then obviously some good updates on some other players too.
Yeah, as far as Smael Mondon goes, it sounded like it was a little bit more upbeat, and Branson Robinson may be the one that fans are not as pumped to hear about because that running back depth, I think when you hear that neither one is fully ready to go, but with Branson, from what we're hearing and what we're thinking, it sounds like that's the worst case scenario. Not the worst case, but the worst case out of himself and Smael Mondon.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the depth is a concern at that position. I mean, you've got 5 scholarship running backs. One of those is coming off of an ACL tear, not quite coming up on a year ago. So he probably won't be, a back to 100% full speed. When things are going, he'll still be shaking off some of that rust. So you're down to 4 guys. Branson would be one of those 4. And so if you're down to 3 with Kendall Milton, who's battled injuries throughout his career, Dejan Edwards, and a true freshman, Roderick Robinson, you could be relying on some walk-on running backs there. Cash Jones, Savon Clark, Lyneth Whitehead, who they brought in from the transfer portal from Tennessee. Played a little bit of linebacker, a little bit of running back, and Athens native there. That's definitely the more concerning of the two because of where it looks like that he is in terms of his comeback from that injury and also the depth, because you look at that linebacker room and they'd be okay if they didn't have Smael Mondon for the entire season. They've got that much talent. I mean, that's not to say that you want to play without Smael Mondon. You've got him on your team. You want to have him out there. But with the talent that they've got in that room, next to him, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, Xavier Sori was the highest rated of those guys coming out of high school, or one of the higher rated than Jamon for sure. Depending on who you looked at there, he was up there with Smael as well, 5-star guy. The guys that they brought in, with Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen, Troy Bowles, they've got tons and tons and tons. Jalen Walker, another guy that how can you forget him? Incredible player from last season's freshman class. They've got tons of talent in that room. And so they'll be okay there with or without Smael Mondon. They should have him at some point. Branson Robinson is the one that you would prefer to have back a little bit quicker.
Seemed like the update on Kendall Milton though was pretty positive, Rusty.
Yeah, I mean, can you guys hear me? I had to switch up computers.
Yeah, we got you.
Make sure. Always keep a backup. But yeah, I think that was a positive as well. But me and Palmer touched on this thing, and Wes, I think you would agree. Kind of makes you a little bit nervous with Branson Robinson, Smael Mondon not really having everything's good to rock with those guys, because those are 2 extremely valuable pieces. But that running back position, we could talk about that for a while. Andrew Paul coming off an ACL. You got Kendall Milton, who's been banged up at times, through his career. So it's important that Kendall Milton is healthy and, kind of shows those flashes of what he's shown late in the year last year, catching some balls against TCU and doing some things like that. So we'll see. That running back position is going to be the one that Georgia fans are kind of wondering where the production is going to come from.
There was a thread on our board that was kind of calling into question, maybe doubting a little bit, whether or not Georgia has that really good set of hands coming out of the backfield that Kenny McIntosh had and James Cook had the year before that. And I don't want people to forget about Dejan Edwards, old Mustard back there, man. I think he can catch the ball pretty well. I know that Kenny McIntosh, from what Coach McGee said, had the best hands since DeAndre Swift was back there, and that's really high praise. But I would encourage the fans, even with this, I guess, questionable depth situation at running back, don't forget about Edwards back there.
I just think that, you're not looking at, and I agree with you, those guys are capable of pass catching, and that's certainly been an emphasis this offseason. They haven't been asked to do it because they've had Kenny McIntosh on the roster as long as they've been there. Would I bet on one of these running backs finishing top 3 in receiving on the team? No. No one's going to go over 500 yards. But I think that that's maybe a little bit of an unrealistic expectation. I think as you look back, James Cook, that 2021 season, was a top 5 pass catcher. It's 27 catches for 284 yards. Maybe that's more realistic, but I think you could also be looking at, maybe like what he did in 2020, 16 catches, 225, 2 touchdowns. And to get that out of a running back, with the other pass catchers that they have, that's plenty. That's plenty. And get the ball in the hands of those other pass catchers and don't risk putting miles on these running backs where depth is a concern, like we've said. Don't risk putting the miles on them out of the backfield as pass catchers when you've got other guys that can catch the ball.
Yeah, the way the schedule sets up, I wonder if we won't see a lot of Cash Jones in some of these early games that presumably should be pretty lopsided because you just don't know how that depth is going to shake out. Andrew Paul, Kirby Smart said he's kind of your traditional ACL case where he's ready to go, but he doesn't expect him to be 100% just yet. But I'm excited to see that guy. I know that Del McGee kind of found a diamond in the rough there, so I'm excited to see what that kid out of Texas does.